Welcome to today's custom deep dive. We're unpacking an article called The Bitterroot Mirror today, which explores Montana's Bitterroot Valley.
Yeah, but we should probably clarify right up front that we aren't just looking at, scenic tourist traps today.
No, definitely not. We are hunting for what the author calls thin places.
I love that term.
It's great. It basically refers to those rare locations where the physical world and the spiritual world seem to just reach out and shake hands.
Right. And this valley's history essentially acts like a manual for the human experience.
Yeah.
It teaches a pretty profound lesson about balance, telling us that surviving life requires two things: a sharp knife and a quiet heart.
A sharp knife and a quiet heart. I really like that. Let's actually start with finding that quiet heart at the Red Sun Labyrinth in Victor.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, to be clear to everyone listening, this isn't some frustrating maze filled with minotaurs or David Bowie.
Thankfully, no.
Yeah, it's a single Cretan-style path designed for purgation. But instead of just wandering around, what does walking that specific geometric pattern actually do to our headspace?
Well, it strips away the modern noise
Yeah.
because the path loops back on itself.
Without any dead ends.
Exactly, without any dead ends or choices to make. So it forces a kind of manual override on your brain. It basically forces you to dump your mental trash and close the 40 browser tabs open in your head.
So you aren't problem solving anymore.
No, you're entering this state of quiet mathematical precision. It's a method for really deep internal clearing.
But that internal clearing eventually has to connect outward, right? Which brings to mind how the Salish viewed their connection to the land at the Medicine Tree near Derby.
The history there is incredibly powerful.
It really is. The tradition says a hero defeated a terrorizing great ram and embedded its horn right into this massive ponderosa pine. Now, is this meant to be just a literal monument?
Not at all. It functions more as the living, spiritual, and legal document of reciprocity.
Meaning if the land sustains you, you owe it your respect.
Yes. Standing for it reminds you that you aren't an isolated island. You are really just a leaf on a deeply rooted ancestral tree.
You know, that concept of being part of something larger really echoes through the Sacred Door Trail near Hamilton.
The 200-mile pilgrimage loop.
Yeah, 200 miles. And the strict protocol for hiking it is to simply shut up and listen. Just total silence.
Which sounds brutal.
It does.
Yeah.
Why would trail designers enforce a rule that makes an already grueling physical trek even more demanding?
Because they intentionally use that physical toll to force a psychological shift.
Like the blisters and the heavy breathing.
Right. When you are silent and physically exhausted, you are pushed out of your ego-driven world. You stop ruminating on your personal problems and start realizing your universal interdependence.
So you have this quiet, spiritual interdependence on the trail, which contrasts so sharply with the harsh, literal survivalism of St. Mary's Mission in Stevensville.
Yeah, the origin story from 1841 is wild.
Salish delegations traveling all the way to St. Louis. What drove them to seek out European Jesuit priests, the black robes, in such brutal conditions?
It was absolute necessity against a frozen kingdom. They were facing negative 40-degree Fahrenheit winters on what was known as the Great Ice Highway.
Wow.
The Salish wanted to learn the Great Prayer, but building a lasting community required fusing European knowledge with ancient mountain wisdom. They needed each other just to stay alive.
And from that fragile human cooperation, you eventually hit the sheer uncontrollable force of Skalkaho Falls, a 150-foot waterfall with an absolute I do not care about your plan's energy.
It really is. And the only protocol when facing that kind of raw power is humility.
Because it's a reality check.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much time trying to micromanage our surroundings, and the falls serve as a massive check against our modern illusion of control.
So bringing this all back to you listening right now, how do we actually apply this?
By recognizing that these 5 waypoints form a complete mirror. The mind at the labyrinth, ancestors at the medicine tree, spirit on the trail, community at the mission, and raw power at the falls.
They reflect the exact balance of grit and wisdom required in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Which leaves you with this final provocative thought to ponder. If your own local neighborhood was mapped out just like the Bitterroot Valley, where would your personal thin places be hiding in plain sight?